Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra, aka Hidden Agendas. Today, continuing with our more podcast listening oriented YouTube video, Don't Let Biden Hand the Presidency to Trump. And in that, I'm looking at a few themes. One, how Biden lost what I call the true left. Subset to that, how he distressed what I call reasonable conservatives. Point 2, category 2, his dementia care unit debate performance. And 3, just followed up with a combination of wild, yet I hope informed speculation on why he is still refusing to step aside. Numero uno, how Biden lost what I call the true left. My regular viewers or listeners know when I say true left, I mean those who are challenging the dominance of our society by these large vested business interests. Chief among them, fossil fuel petrochemicals and defense industry. How he somewhat lost the climate activists. You may remember when gas prices started rising in the US of A and worldwide. Well, news outlets, fossil fuel front news outlets, which in a sense are all of them, but especially news outlets like Fox and the ones that claim to be conservative, started blaming radical environmentalists for the rise of gas prices, even though it was a worldwide trend. Biden's response? To capitulate to them and drill. Now, we all knew if Bernie Sanders had made it, he would have said something like, I believe anyway, the fossil fuel industry has us by the you-know-what. Our biosphere is being pumped full of carcinogens and greenhouse gases, and we cannot, yet again, cave into this industry. People like Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, and I made a video about this one before, put out a bill to tax what he called excess profits of the fossil fuel industry and give it back to the public to help them with the rising energy prices. Those solutions adversarial to that interest, little talked about in the media and definitely not talked about by Joe Biden. His Inflation Reduction Act, a weaker version of the Green New Deal, barely understood, barely talked about by our media, and in my opinion, cowardly did not mention anything about greenhouse gases or the climate in its title, did little to show the public what Biden was doing positive for our environment. Worse yet, the Center for Biodiversity, who seems to me like a pretty legitimate environmental group, claimed that the Biden administration has actually issued more drilling permits than Donald J. Trump. Well, that makes Joe Biden a Mr. Have It Both Ways, trying to appease and satiate that oil and gas industry, who we all know their hardcore supporters are going Trump, are going Republican. Yet he appeases them and upsets us. Upsetting true leftists was his policies regarding Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. Yes, this arming of Ukraine has been sold to the liberals, while not the leftists, as part of a standing up for democracy, standing up against authoritarians and Putin and his anti-LGBTQAI plus policies. But in my opinion, and I believe in many of what I call the true left, that is really just selling the defense industry to liberals. The same as how fossil fuels have been marketed to conservatives. Underreported in our media, yet the true peace activists all know that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's bright line has been, hey, do not expand your NATO into Ukraine or Georgia. Is that really too much to ask? And when we look at what NATO has done, well, look at the NATO alliance providing air support for the uprising in Libya, toppling Muammar Gaddafi, leaving Libya in chaos. And yes, the invasion of Iraq was not a NATO adventure, but it had some of the same players, leaving Iraq in chaos. And look at the US's our support for the uprisings in Syria, leaving Syria in a bloody, horrific stalemate. And Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin himself, speaking of that military-industrial complex, was, I believe, on the board of directors at Raytheon. See Gaza and the West Bank and Israel. Here, while my liberal Democrats may not be convinced that the arming of Ukraine is the wrong thing to do, most of them, the vast majority of them, seem to be convinced that these ceaseless supplies and support for what Israel is doing, what appears to most to be ethnic cleansing in Gaza and the West Bank, is not a good idea. Joe Biden's have it both ways. We are working towards peaceful negotiations, but we're just waiting until enough Palestinians are dead, is again, like his policies on climate, really upsetting everyone. Well, now, subset D, undermining what I consider some reasonableness in the conservative causes, well, my impression is that Joe Biden administration has came out swinging for what people now call gender-affirming care for minors, but in my youth would have been called sex change operations. Well, here, guess what? Based on my discussions with people, there is almost a cult of silence within the liberal and left community because many people are secretly questioning the reasonableness of pumping our youth full of hormones that will alter their endocrine system or their sexual characteristics, or performing cosmetic, either additive or removing body parts surgeries on our youth. This is actually not popular. But yes, we all agree that no one should be picked on or harassed or ostracized for their choices or what they think they need to do. So in my opinion, this just focusing on a few culture war issues is what Bernie would say all a big tactic not to upset the donor class. Well, now we come to chapter 2, the debate performance. You know, pre-debate, I heard a pundit say, we need to see Red Bull Joe up there. And I think what he meant is there was some speech Joe gave, but Ms. President Biden gave, where he had Red Bull and maybe he was really animated. I'm not sure, but when I saw him during that debate performance, it looked to me like a man who was exhausted, tired, but on something. His eyes going wide, then dim, looking down, speaking in a fashion that was more extremely hard to follow than that of Donald Trump's. You know, Trump, his followers have always given him the benefit of the doubt. You know what he means. Who knows what he means? But here was Biden doing the same. So if President Joe Biden has already demoralized all of what I call the true left, many of the people who are really activists for the Democrats, he's already demoralized the Muslims who were very spooked by Trump. And then this amazingly horrific debate performance. Why wouldn't he step down? We're in chapter 3 now. Why wouldn't he step down? Well, Joe Biden, based on what I've seen on Frontline and reading reports from Thomas Scahill of The Intercept, is a Cold Warrior at heart. He's basically at heart a supporter of the military-industrial complex. We know what we're going to get with Trump. With Trump, we will get Gaza, let Israel finish the job, which I can only interpret as ethnic cleansing of the West Bank and Gaza. Ukraine, okay, there could be a little change in policy, but not a principled change. There'll be no more space for China, no speaking out against the power of the defense industry in our government. More based on a fantasy that Russia shares, quote, conservative values, close quote, or even maybe a desire to see a world furthering into ethnic nationalism, as Steve Bannon, big Trump supporter, has articulated. So I believe. And Trump has come out swinging hard for the fossil fuel petrochemical industry. Drill, baby, drill, cut taxes for the rich and deregulate the environment, then build a wall to keep out those foreigners. That's why some people call him a fascist. So the wild speculation now is that Biden or his donors, and this is just wild speculation, so don't hang the speculator, Biden or his donors would rather see Trump in office to further the policies of the extremists within Israel, in Gaza, and the West Bank, and to further protect that oil and gas industry and fracking, than risk a Democrat who will threaten that military-industrial complex or that fossil fuel petrochemical industry. So to that, President Biden, I say to you, my viewer and listener, I say whether Biden stays in or drop out, whatever the reason is for him staying in, don't let him hand this election to Donald J. Trump. Well, hope you found this informative, interesting, good food for thought. If so, please make sure you are subscribed. You are clicking that notification bell so you know when I put up a new video, put up a new podcast. You are liking, you are commenting. Your comments really help keep me going. I'm fine with some negative. Just if you could be polite about it, that would be appreciated. Supportive, of course, appreciated as well, goes without saying. And thank you to the few people who have donated to me at Patreon. Hopefully one day we can make this show into something truly sustainable. Bella Lugrussi and Environmental Coffee House. And as always, until next time, peace be with you.